الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وأنت خير الراحمين ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. So we were doing Surah Yusuf as far as I remember, sorry, before leaving, and of course I cannot remember where we were. So I think we were at the point where he kept his brother, right? He kept his brother, yeah, and the elder brother, and he tells them that he goes through their stuff, right? And he can't find it. He finds it in the younger brother's luggage, so to speak, and he keeps it, right? He keeps it, and he keeps the brother. And I think it was ayah number 80. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. If you're following, this ayah number 80 in Surah Yusuf. فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا مِنْهُ خَلَصُوا نَجِيًّا. So they have an argument with Yusuf alayhi salam, with the minister, to try to convince them to keep the younger brother. And they tell him his father's older, his father's going to get sick, his father's going to be really upset when the boy doesn't come back. And he basically tells them, I can only keep the one in which I found the stuff, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا مِنْهُ. This is the start of ayah number 80. فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا مِنْهُ. Yes in Arabic means to give up on something, right? To give up on something. So this is called yes, or ya'asa, right? Yes comes from to give up on something. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses it another term in Surah Al-Zumar, where he says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قل يا أيها الناس لا تيأسوا من روح الله. No, he says, sorry, I'm missing the ayah right now. Not to ever give up on the forgiveness of Allah. In fact, we'll hear Yaqub alayhi salam say this here in a second to his boys. And so فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا means they gave up on him, they gave up hope in him. خَلَصُوا نَجِيًّا means they left him and they departed. Sayyidina Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, who says this part, أيوة ما شاء الله. قل يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين أيوة ما شاء الله. يا أيها الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من روح الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو غفور رحيم. جزاكم الله خير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Zumar, which is the companions have said, this is the most hopeful ayah in the Quran. The most optimistic ayah of the Quran is this ayah. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تيأسوا من روح الله. You, speaking to humanity, you have made israf against themselves. Now, israf in Arabic means to overspend. You to overspend. In other words, to go to excess. Asrafu ala anfusihim in this ayah means they have done so many dhunub and ma'asi. Just a massive amount of all kinds of things. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. It was all kinds of things. The most evil of sins to the most, junior of sins or the most minor of sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تيأسوا من روح الله. Do not ever give up hope in the forgiveness of Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Most certainly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all sins, all kinds of sins. No matter how massive we may think our sins are, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to be bigger. It doesn't matter how wicked we think of ourselves, how many evil things we may have done. The mercy of Allah is always much bigger, right? And so in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they gave up on themselves, right? They gave up on the argument with Yusuf alayhi salam. خلصوا نجية means they basically packed up and left. It means they packed up and left. It means they packed up and went to a hotel in those terms. It means they huddled up. It means all these things. All these things are things they could have done. They left the palace, they huddled up, what do we do now? Where should we go? What's going to happen? قال كبيرهم. So their oldest brother, قال كبيرهم. He says to them, ألم تعلموا, don't you know أن أباكم قد أخذ عليكم موثقا من الله ومن قبل ما فرطتم في يوسف. So the older brother says, don't you know, let me just get the English as well because I actually have the Arabic here in front of me. Don't you know the promise that you made to your father? Don't you know about that? What was the promise that they made to the father? Who can remember?
They will protect.
They will protect the Binyamin. They will bring him back no matter what. The commitment they made to the father is they will bring him back no matter what, right? And now they have, and then not only that, but the father said, I'm not sending with you until you bring me an oath. Like, this is serious. They didn't just casually say, oh yeah, we'll do our best. They didn't do that. They literally said, you know, by Allah, we will bring him back no matter what we do. And Yaqub puts a condition. What's the condition that he put? Does anyone remember?
Unless if
Exactly. Unless the circumstances are out of your control. But, so now they're like, you know, we committed to the father. Is this out of control? Not out of control. We don't know what to do, right? So he reminds them of this, and then he adds now another piece of information at the end where he says, وَمِن قَبْلُ مَا فَرَّطْتُمْ فِي يُوسُف. And before that, what you had, all the wrongdoing you had made with Yusuf alayhi salam. He suddenly now starts to remember Yusuf and all the bad things that they did to Yusuf. He says, like, look, this isn't, we all know, we all participated in this crime years and years and years ago. 30 years ago, what happened? Or however long ago, 30 years. Remember, we took Yusuf and we also committed to bring Yusuf back. And what did we do? We threw him in the well. He's probably dead by now. He's dead and he's gone. And what did we go back? We lied to the father. So what are we going to do this time around, right? So this is now the conversation going on, led by the older brother. By the way, many of the Mufassirin say it's also the older brother that back when they decided to get rid of Yusuf, remember what was the first thing that they wanted to do?
murder.
Kill him. The first thing was murder, right? If we get rid of him, if we kill him, he's out of our way and the father's going to pay attention to us. But someone said, قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ لَا تَقْتُلُوا يُوسُف. Someone from the brothers said, don't kill Yusuf, وَأَلْقُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ, and throw him in the well instead. Many of the Mufassirin say this was also the older brother. This was also the older boy. So now the older boy is also bringing in another voice of reason here, right? وَمِنْ قَبْلُ مَا فَرَّطْتُمْ فِي يُوسُف. So he says, فَلَنْ أَبْرَحَ الْأَرْضَ حَتَّى يَأْذَنَ لِي أَبِي. أَبْرَحَ الْأَرْض means I'm not going to leave this country. I'm not going to leave this land until my father permits me to leave. أَوْ يَأْذَنَ اللَّهُ لِي. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, somehow I get a fatwa, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a wahy to Yaqub alayhi salam that he should depart. يَأْذَنَ اللَّهُ يَأْذَنَ لِي أَبِي أَوْ يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ لِي. Hukm in Arabic means a decree, right? Like a decree from a judge. It's called a hukm, right? أَوْ يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ لِي وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. And he is the best of judges, right? He's the best of judges. In other words, what's the punishment? He's imposing a punishment on himself. And what is this punishment? He's making himself illegal in Egypt. You know, like this is the punishment. You know, if someone lives here illegally, it's very hard to get a job. It's very hard to make a paycheck. If you do get a job, people are going to pay you a lot less than the minimum wage. They know you're illegal. I don't care about the minimum wage. You have no legal rights anyway. You understand? It's going to be hard to find a house. It's going to be hard to get a car. It's going to be hard for people to trust you, open a bank account, all these things. So he imposes himself, the self kind of imposed exile, as a way to punish himself for what he's done, for what's happened to Binyamin. أو يأذن الله حتى يأذن لي أبي, unless my father gives me permission. أو يحكم الله لي وهو خير الحاكمين, and Allah is the best of hukam. Now remember, when you hear the language of the boy, the language of the brother, and he says أو يأذن الله لي وهو خير الحاكمين, what does that tell you about him? That Allah gives me permission, and He is the best of. Khairul Hakimin means that the best of judges. Right? Hukm means judges, right? When we read, in the Quran, Yasin or the Quran, Al-Hakim. It comes from this word. Hakim means wise. Quran has a lot of wisdom in it, right? What does that tell you about the boy? What does that tell you about the brother?
He is still guilty.
He feels guilty, and guilt is good because he has a sense of iman. His heart is still alive. You know, when we commit sins, you know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all, when people commit sins, if they don't have a sense of guilt and regret, it's very difficult to make tawbah. It's very difficult to make tawbah, right? When people's hearts have died is where you have the real problem. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this in the Quran. He says, it's not about being blind in the eyes, it's about being blind where? In the heart. If the heart is blind, suddenly the human being doesn't make a distinction between right and wrong. Wrong becomes just as right for them as right. Do you understand? Like, they no longer feel anything. They no longer feel anything. But when you have a sense of guilt, that's why, by the way, one of the conditions of tawbah is what? A sense of guilt. Tawbah, one of the conditions of the acceptance of tawbah is someone has a sense of regret, means that the heart is still alive. Right? The heart is still alive. That's why the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at your shapes and forms. He doesn't look on the day of judgment how big you are, how tall you are, how handsome you are, how much you weigh. He looks at your hearts. He looks at what's in the heart, right? So this tells us that he still has a sense, you know, of iman in him.
So I think you
Yes.
also put it this way that this brother had a sense of guilt
Yes.
and also a sense of hope in the justice of Allah, because maybe he never had the bad intentions in the first place, or the first incident with Yusuf.
Yes.
And also now he has good intentions, and he's feeling that my intentions are always right.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that Allah will judge me on my intentions.
Yes, he's feeling a sense of regret for what he's done, because he definitely feels like he participated in the crime. Definitely feels like he participated years back, and it's on his, you know, it hurts him, right? It hurts him, and now he's like, this is out of my control. I don't know what to do about this, but I feel terrible about going back and making the same excuse that I made with Yusuf, you know, years back. But by the way, this is also similar. Can anyone remember another prophet of Allah that, you know, Prophet of Allah different from him, even though some of Fassirin say they eventually become prophets? We don't know that. But does anyone know a story of a prophet that also had the strong sense of guilt after something that he did?
Yunus
Yunus alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam. Yeah, Yunus alayhi salam leaves his people, right? He's like, hey, you know, I'm not gonna waste my time with you anymore. I'm leaving, right? Musa alayhi salam, as he was leaving Egypt, right? He kills a guy, and he now has to escape, and the guilt is on him. The guilt is still on him, right? Those are two other examples. So, and remember, these are also sons of a messenger. These aren't just like us. These are sons of. Remember, Yaqub alayhi salam. He's a messenger of Allah. He taught his children Islam. He didn't just let them grow up making things up. Like, they know that there's Allah. They know that there's They know there's Jannah. They know these things, right? Okay. So he now says in the following ayah, number 81, "Irji'u ila abikum." Go back to your father. فَقُولُوا يَا أَبَانَا إِنَّ ابْنَكَ سَرَقَ إِنَّ ابْنَكَ سَرَقَ وَمَا شَهِدْنَا إِلَّا بِمَا عَلِمْنَا وَمَا كُنَّا لِلْغَيْبِ حَافِظِينَ. Now, this is the beauty of the Quran, not wasting words, right? One of the most eloquent things about the Quran, when you appreciate the language, also doesn't waste words. Like when you know, not like us when we speak, or like authors when they write. So you start to see, if you're watching this again, as I keep going back to this movie, you're watching this on a 4K definition, you see a scene where the older brother is speaking to the rest of the brothers. He starts to tell them, go back to your father and say this, and it automatically transposes into the scene where they're in front of the father telling him what's going on. Do you know what I mean? This is exactly the storytelling way. The same ayah, the scene blends from one scene where the brother says, go back to your father and say this, immediately to the camera now in the house of the father, where the rest of the brothers are telling him exactly what the older brother said. In fact, they're continuing the statement, right, of the older brother. So, go back to your father. فَقُولُوا, say to him, so now they're in front of the father, saying, yeah, Abana. So we don't have to say, so he said this to them, so they got back on their camels, so they went back to Palestine, and they went into the house of Yaqub, and they knocked the door, and the father said, hey, where's the boy? Then they said, you understand? It's understood, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful, right? So they go back to the father and say, Ya Abana inna ibnaka saraq. Your son stole. وَمَا شَهِدْنَا إِلَّا بِمَا عَلِمْنَا. And we're only telling you what we witnessed. وَمَا كُنَّا لِلْغَيْبِ حَافِظِينَ. We didn't know anything about this. We didn't know that this was going to happen. We don't know the ghaib. We don't know what Allah has in store for us. We didn't know that this was going to happen. How could we know, right? Now, what's a little bit disingenuous about that statement from them to the father? Does anyone recall what happened? What's a little bit disingenuous about this statement, specific to Binyamin? Do you remember what they said when they pulled the stuff out of his bags? What did they say?
His brother also was a thief.
No? Inshallah. Remember what they said? They said, إِن يَسْرِقْ فَقَدْ سَرَقَ أَخٌ لَهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ. They said, if he stole, we're actually not that surprised. He had another brother a long time ago that also stole. Do you remember that? And then Allah said, فَأَصَرَّهَا يُوسُف. So Yusuf was standing. And remember, you're now in front of the you're one of the highest officials of the country, if not the most powerful official of the country. فَأَصَرَّهَا يُوسُف. So what does he say? He keeps it in his heart. He keeps it in his heart. He doesn't like, and he responds like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes his feelings. He says I'm incredulous that you just said that. Do you know what I can? Not only are you lying, and you know you're lying, do you know what I can do to you? Like that's kind of the sentiment that Yusuf had, right? So they say, look, your son stole, and وَمَا شَهِدْنَا إِلَّا بِمَا عَلِمْنَا, and we're only telling you what we witness. وَمَا كُنَّا لِلْغَيْبِ حَافِظِينَ. Now, watch what they say next. واسأل القرية التي كنا فيها والعير التي أقبلنا فيها وإنا لصادقون. So what do they say? They say, and ask the village that we came from. Ask the city that we just came from. Ask the caravan that moved with us from Palestine to the city. You know so-and-so, and you know so-and-so, and you know so-and-so. And they were with us on this whole journey. Ask them what happened to verify what we're saying is the truth. How is this situation different to their reaction with Yusuf alayhi salam? This ayah, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is transmitting to us the story. But the reaction is very different from what happened years and years ago. How is it different? They had no witness a long time ago, right? Now they're saying, we have witnesses. We know it's the truth. Ask them. The first time with Yusuf alayhi salam, did they say that? No, they had no witness. In fact, they just said, like, here's the shirt. Right? Here's the shirt. It's just full of blood. Right? And a bloody shirt that we brought back for you. That's the only thing that we have, right? And they wanted to shut it down. But now they're truthful. So like, ask these people, they were with us. Ask the city we were in, check with them. He really got arrested. They really found the king's stuff in his bag, right? And we are truthful. Now, what's the other contrast here? Again, just to appreciate the language of the Quran a little bit. They say, وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ. What did they say in the case of Yusuf? وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُؤْمِنٍ لَنَا وَلَوْ كُنَّا صَادِقِينَ. In the case of Yusuf, what did they say? They said, you're not going to believe us even if we were truthful. But here, what do they say? We are truthful. We are truthful, right? Okay. وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ. So, Yaqub alayhi salam responds. That's ayah number 83, Yaqub alayhi salam. قَالَ بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Again, contrasting and understanding the beauty of the Quran. Was this said before? By Yaqub alayhi salam. He says, no, but this is something that your nafs is transmitting that you do. When did Yaqub alayhi salam say this? Exact same ayah. قَالَ بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. With Yusuf alayhi salam, when they brought back the shirt. The reputation is just shattered right now. The reputation is just destroyed. I didn't believe you back then, and I don't believe you now. Now they're being truthful, but he doesn't believe that the son stole. Do you understand? They're being truthful about what they saw, but he's like, I don't believe it. I don't believe that he would steal. He's not that kind of guy. I know my son, right? قال بل سولت لكم أنفسكم أمرا فصبر جميل. Does anyone remember when this happened before? فصبر جميل. Also with Yusuf alayhi salam. He says the exact same thing. قال بل سولت لكم أنفسكم أمرا فصبر جميل. First time he says, والله المستعان على ما تصفون. What does he say here? عسى الله أن يأتيني بهم جميعا. So you could see that. So عسى الله أن يأتيني بهم, meaning فصبر جميل, I'm still going to have this beautiful sabr. Remember what we said about sabr jameel? Sabr jameel is the patience where someone, no matter how tough the circumstances, they're not complaining. They're not complaining, right? They're not complaining to human beings in particular, even though we said that that's haram halal. To go to a human being and to say, this is happening to me. It's not haram. It's not haram. When you want people to help you out, it's not necessarily haram. But it's not sabrun jameel. You understand? Like it's not sabrun jameel. Yaqub alayhi salam is saying sabrun jameel, meaning I'm not going to complain to anyone. I'm not going to say this to anyone. This is between me and Allah, and only between me and Allah. Right? So this is an extreme lesson in patience for us. Extreme lesson. Yeah, like the surah, when we'll go through some of the learnings, inshallah towards the end, has so many learnings. One of the learnings we have isn't just in the character of Yusuf and his, defending himself from temptation, the patience with the patient situation that he had in prison, the da'wah that he makes in prison. So every situation he takes, he makes da'wah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter how tough the circumstances may be. But Yaqub alayhi salam is also giving us example after example after example, right? So this is another example Yaqub alayhi salam gives in terms of patience. Asa Allahu an ya'tini bihim jami'a. So the second part of the ayah, inshallah, asa in Arabic, asa is an optimistic way of saying, I hope that, or it's like saying, inshallah, Allah will bring them all back to me. When he says bring them all back to me, who's he referring to? Yusuf and Binyamin. I have you, I love you, my children, but I'm missing two of them, and I love them both, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring them back. Asa Allah an jami'a. Innahu al-alimun hakim. He uses two attributes to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember when you read the Quran, you see these attributes of Allah mentioned at the end of some of the ayah. They mean something. They mean something with respect to the context of the ayah and the context of the situation. Right? So for example, the brother, a couple of ayats earlier, what does he say? أَوْ يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ لِي وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. One of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is He's the best of judges. Here, he's saying He is an alim al-hakim. He knows everything and He is the most wise. In other words, this is going on for a reason that I don't understand. This is going on for a reason that I don't understand. You witness things in a way that you may not understand. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an alim al-hakim. There's a reason why this is happening, and we don't know what it is, but inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring them back to me. Right? And this is part of the Iman al-Qadr. This is part of it, which is one of the hardest things, especially if someone's going through a hard time. We believe everything that happens is the Qadr of Allah. When Qadr is tough, it's tough. And so, but this is an example where Qadr is tough, and he says, look, Allah is an Alim al-Hakim. I don't know what I'm going through, but He is an Alim al-Hakim ultimately, right? وَتَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ. And here is now an application of Sabrun Jameel. Because what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَتَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ, the following ayah. What does تَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ mean? He left them alone. He left them, he's like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to go back to my house. I'm going to go back to my room. Right? I'm going back to my room. وَتَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ. وَقَالَ. And now he says, right? يَا أَسَفْنَا عَلَى يُوسُفَ وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. And he starts to regret, and he said, "Yeah, asafa," in Arabic is a way of saying, I miss him, I regret him, I'm sad because Yusuf isn't there, and he's crying out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That I don't have my son anymore, and he correlates missing Binyamin. Clearly, he misses Binyamin, but he makes an emotional connection between missing Binyamin and the fact that Binyamin didn't come back from the trip, from what happened years and years and years ago, when his youngest son didn't also come back from the trip, right? Yusuf alayhi salam. وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ. And his eyes turned white from crying. فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. Kazim means an extreme type of sadness in your heart. The only way that it's expressed is through a bodily reaction, and what we're seeing Yaqub do is actually crying. Right? So Kazim means extremely upset on the inside, right? And not releasing it. Kazim also means, for example, you'll see in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. What does وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظ mean in the Quran? وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. He describes character of people that enter into Jannah, right? In fact, one of the ulama had said in describing the different gates of Jannah, that one of the gates is called Dar al-Kazimin al-Ghayb. There's no authentic hadith, by the way, that describes the gates of Jannah. There's some gates that are mentioned, but not all of them. This is from the ijtihad of the ulama. And one of them has said one of the gates is called Dar al-Kazimin al-Ghayb. What does Kazimin al-Ghayb mean? Right, to correlate it to Yaqub saying, فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. Kazimin al-Ghayb means those that suppress their anger. Those that suppress their anger. So this concept of suppression of the anger, when you can, when you can blow up from an Islamic perspective, is a sign of strength. It's a sign of strength of character and a sign of strength of iman as well, right? That you don't just explode, right? In fact, it's said about one of I can't remember who it was, one of the Khulafa that came after Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he had a maid, if you like, working in his house that came to serve him his food and dropped the food on him. And so he gets furious. He has all this wonderful dress and he gets very furious. So she says, well, so he says, he's like, I'm now angry at you. Then she says to him, well, Afina an this means the ones that forgive people. She says, I've forgiven you. And then she says, Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin. Says, you're free to go. Allah yuhibbul muhsinin means like, you have ihsan on me, so you're free to go. So here, Qadim means that the sadness is in the heart, and the eyes have become white. Now, some of the Mufassirin said he's gone blind. Others have said he has not gone blind. So the ones that say he's gone blind, why do they say he's gone blind? What's the evidence?
Because the shirt.
Because the shirt later on, yeah, brings back the sight, right? Others say no, it wasn't that bad. So others say his eyesight got very, very weak to the point like he can't see very well, but he wasn't completely wrong. Allah A'lam, but this is also from the ijtihad of the ulama, right? قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر. So now the family is reacting. By the way, you'll see the family reacting, and I'm calling it the family for a reason. The family is now reacting to what Yaqub alayhi salam is saying. So you can go like Yaqub is in his room, he's praying, he's making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's praying tahajjud, he's this. Every time the family passes by, they see him, right? He's in his room or he's in his house, or like they come to even give him food, they see what he's doing, right? So it's like, dude, are you not going to stop? Do you understand the attitude? The same, and by the way, why I say family is because when you have an old man like Yaqub alayhi salam was living with his boys, and his boys are married, he's married, right? His boys have children, right? So he's a grandfather. His children may have, their children may have children, or probably we don't know. But these people live close to him, yes? And they come back to check on the grandfather. And they hear the stories being transmitted by who? By the father, and by the wife, and by the other father, and by the cousin, and by this and by that. So in their mind, this old man, he keeps thinking about Yusuf, man, and like he needs to stop or he's going to kill himself. Do you understand that mindset? And this message keeps getting transmitted in the family, right? This happens again when? This exact same reaction that they're going to have to Yaqub alayhi salam. After they get the shirt, on the way back to Palestine, he calls out again and they say to him, like you keep reminding Yusuf of yourself, like they actually say the same now. But they say to him, إنك لفي ضلالك القديم, like you're back to your old hallucinations of Yusuf coming back, So here they say to him, قالوا تالله. So they swear by Allah. قالوا تالله. By Allah. Like they pass by Allah. قالوا تفتأ تذكر يوسف. You're reminding yourself of Yusuf, calling out for Yusuf, making dua for Yusuf. حتى تكون حرضا أو تكون من الهلاكين. Harlan means to get very sick, and Halakim means to die. You're just going to kill yourself, man. You're getting so sick that you keep reminding yourself of Yusuf and making, dua all the time that he shows back up again. You need to stop this, right? So this is the reaction of the family. So now another example in patience from Yaqub alayhi salam. And we'll close off with this, inshallah, if you like, and resume next week. Ayah number 86 at the bottom of the page. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. So he says to them, I am only complaining to Allah. وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. So he says to them, I am only crying out to Allah. بثي وحزني. Everything that I'm asking for and my sadness, I'm only crying out to Allah. And then he gives the little tidbit at the end. He gives them a little tidbit. What does he say? وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. He says, I know from Allah what you don't know. Does he tell them what he knows that he doesn't know? No. Do we know what it is? No. But he had a hint. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may not have given him the full picture, but he had a hint. He had something in his heart. That something, it's not quite as it seems. Yusuf isn't quite gone, and something happened with Binyamin. It may have appeared that he stole something and he kept him in prison, but it's not quite that simple. And so he has an inclination in his heart, right, as a messenger, and that's why he says, وَأَعْلَمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know something from Allah that you don't know. He doesn't tell them what it is. We don't think he knows the full picture, but he had an inclination that they're actually okay. We're all going to get reconnected again. And what's the evidence of that?
The dream of Yusuf.
The what?
The dream of Yusuf.
The dream of Yusuf, excellent. The dream of Yusuf, which is a perfect answer. And then what he says next in the surah. Because what does he say? قالوا يا بني اذهبوا فتحسسوا من يوسف وأخيه. So he says, go back to Egypt and look for Yusuf and his brother. Look really hard. Tahassasu means look really hard. Like you know, if you send someone into a city, you say, leave no corner or no stone unturned. Look for the two of them really hard, right? And then he repeats this word again. وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. Remember this word? Yes, again that we mentioned earlier, giving up. فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا مِنْهُ خَلَصُوا نَجِيًّا. When they gave up on him, they left him when they were talking to Yusuf. So here what does he say to the brothers? وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. And don't give up on the mercy of Allah. Mercy of Allah, meaning, he means actually multiple things, but he means two key things. One is if you've made a mistake, you're going to be forgiven. And this is a message for all of us. But the second one is what? The mercy of Allah that they're still alive, that you're going to find them. That there's a mistake here. There's a mistake in the system. Something happened in the system and they're actually still okay. And then at the end, he makes a really point. إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Most certainly the only ones that give up and hope on Allah are the people that have kufr. By the way, the ulama have commented on this and this first ayah in Surah Yusuf, which is for anyone to ever think that they're beyond forgiveness. Pay attention because this is so important. No matter how many evil things a person has done, to think that you are beyond forgiveness is in of itself kufr. Why? Why is it kufr?
Doubting Allah's mercy.
Doubting Allah's mercy or
hiding the reality of Allah's mercy.
hiding the reality of Allah's mercy, belittling the mercy. You think the mercy is finite? Like you think, how do you think Allah measures His mercy? You think we measure, I don't know, we measure money. We say they have $1,000. You think Allah only has like 1,000, whatever, or something? What are you talking about? You have no concept then of Allah or His mercy. You understand? So He gives them hope in being able to reconnect with the brothers and finding the brothers one more time. And also in this, there's a lesson for us, like how we read the qasas in the Quran. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is transmitting messages to us about how we should act and how we should behave. So let's make a dua, inshallah, resume next time. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا انت خير الراحمين ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم اللهم زدنا علما وارزقنا فهما اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى ربنا هب لنا من ازواجنا وذرياتنا قرة اعين واجعلنا للمتقين اماما واخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين جزاكم الله خيرا. See you guys next week inshallah.